You know that feeling, right? Just one more chapter, you tell yourself, and boom, the sun's coming up. There's this undeniable magic and a story that just flat out refuses to let you sleep. In this explainer, we're diving deep into the agonizing, yet totally fascinating science of why we willingly subject ourselves to the absolute suspense of an unresolved story. We're going to break down the exact psychological mechanisms that make cliffhangers so incredibly potent. Let's get right into it.
We have all felt this collective groan. It's perfectly summed up by this Reddit user who talks about dedicating hours of your life just for the screen to cut to black or the audiobook to abruptly stop. It's a shared cultural frustration, isn't it? You invest your time, your emotions, your energy, only to be left hanging literally right at the climax. Honestly, it genuinely feels like a betrayal of our time.
So this brings us to the ultimate mystery we're going to solve today. If cliffhangers frustrate us so deeply, why do we keep coming back for more? Like, why do we immediately smash that next episode button or rush out to buy the sequel to a book that just made us want to throw it across the room? What is actually going on in our heads?
Section 1. The Cliffhanger Dilemma. Let's see how this builds from a simple storytelling trick into a full-blown psychological exploit.
You see, this whole phenomenon isn't just about good writing. It's actually a psychological exploit. The foundation for this was formally identified back in 1994, when journalist George Loewenstein theorized the information gap theory of curiosity. He essentially proposed that curiosity is basically a mental itch that just demands scratching. It pops up the exact moment we realize we're missing information, creating this uncomfortable tension that practically forces us to go out and find those missing pieces to close the loop.
Just imagine the cognitive dissonance created in our brains when a story stops dead in its tracks, right between what we currently know and what we desperately want to know. When a chapter ends with a massive unresolved question like, wait, is she going to survive? It actually triggers an anticipatory rush of dopamine. And here's the crazy part. Dopamine isn't just released when we finally get a reward. It actually floods our system when we simply anticipate getting that reward. So it's hooking us on a literal biochemical level.
Section 2. Your brain on suspense. Because, spoiler alert, that lack of self-control is all about neurochemistry.
Seriously? Your complete lack of self-control during a midnight binge watch? That's not your fault. Your obsession actually has a name. It's called the Zeigarnik effect. Discovered by psychologist Bluma Zeigarnik way back in the 1920s, this effect proves that our brains actively hold on to incomplete patterns. When a task is started and establishes a specific tension, our minds basically flag it as unfinished business, and we hold on to those unresolved details because we are desperately seeking the missing pieces we need for closure.
Building right on top of that, we have the Ovsyankina effect, named after Zeigarnik's colleague. This takes things a step further. While the Zeigarnik effect focuses on how we remember unfinished tasks, the Ovsyankina effect explains that physical, behavioral urge you feel to actually resume them. It creates what's called a cognitive quasi-need, and that drives intrusive thoughts, literally compelling you to press play on the next episode just to relieve the tension in your head.
Now, the data behind this is absolutely staggering. Zeigarnik's original experiments revealed that interrupted tasks were remembered up to 90% better than completed ones. 90%! That is a massive difference, and it completely explains why you can vividly recall the exact second your favorite show cut to black at the end of a season, but you probably struggled to remember how a neatly resolved movie ended just last week. Section 3. The Serial Storyteller. Let's trace how people have weaponized this brain chemistry over the centuries.
Long before neuroscientists were mapping out dopamine pathways, writers and marketers were running their own real-time psychological experiments on audiences, and the timeline here is incredibly consistent. Back in 1836, Charles Dickens used serialized cliffhangers to skyrocket sales of the Pickwick Papers, from a mere 400 copies up to 40,000 copies per installment. Fast forward to the 1920s, and Bluma Zeigarnik formally observes this effect in a Vienna cafe, noticing how waiters could perfectly remember unpaid orders but forgot them the second the bill was settled. And today, this exact same mechanism is powering modern Netflix streaming and digital B2B marketing. The playbook really hasn't changed.
If you look at screenwriting guides like the ones from So Create, they show that modern writers intentionally craft these unresolved hooks using a very specific formula. They focus heavily on character stakes, they actively avoid predictability, and they drop in unanswered questions or massive emotional turning points right before cutting away. They leave just enough clues so the twist feels shocking, yet somehow inevitable. It's an expert balancing act to keep viewers hooked without making them feel, completely manipulated.
Section 4. Do they actually work? Let's look at the numbers. So, we know the history and the science, but do audiences actually enjoy being manipulated like this? Well, a really fascinating study from the University at Buffalo tested nearly 500 participants to figure that out. They compared stories ending with the protagonist winning, the antagonist winning, or a cliffhanger. The data proved that cliffhangers sit right in the middle for audience enjoyment. Not quite as satisfying as the hero winning, but definitely better than the villain taking the prize. But here is the absolutely crucial takeaway. Cliffhangers were highly effective at driving the intention to continue watching. Even if we don't love the feeling, it absolutely keeps us coming back.
Why does this work so well? Because as humans, we inherently crave predictability. We want narrative order. The cliffhanger acts as a controlled disruption to our illusion of control. It gives us the feeling that we are right on the brink of understanding everything, only to deliberately withhold that one crucial detail. We desperately want to fix that destabilization, and the only way to get that reassurance we're craving is to consume the very next chapter.
Section 5. The marketing open loop. Prepare for a bit of a paradigm shift here. This psychological exploit isn't just used in fiction. It is secretly dictating how you interact with your favorite brands every single day. Marketers use a specific brand-building framework to create what they call strategic gaps in your customer journey. First, they identify opportunities, then they deliberately design open loops, basically interrupting a process to create that exact same cognitive tension you feel at the end of a TV episode. Then, they engineer a satisfying payoff, test, and optimize. It literally transforms marketing from a passive broadcast into an interactive journey that your brain feels totally compelled to finish.
Apple is an absolute master of the open loop. I mean, they don't just sell phones, they manufacture suspense. By using extreme secrecy, highly controlled information releases, and incredibly cryptic event invitations, they create this massive information vacuum. This turns the mere anticipation of a new product into an unforgettable cultural event. They perfectly manage that cognitive tension right up until the CEO drops that famous "one more thing."
Now, Nike does this a bit differently. They reframe fitness as a perpetual, never-finished journey. They use gamified apps filled with progress bars and dynamic leaderboards to basically externalize your internal tension. And let's talk about their SNKRS app drops. They turn product launches into these highly anticipated blink-and-you-miss-it events. They keep your goals and those exclusive shoes deliberately just out of reach, ensuring that your journey with them is never quite finished.
Meanwhile, Coca-Cola created a massive, decentralized treasure hunt with their Share a Coke campaign. By printing names right on the bottles, they effectively outsourced those open loops directly to us, the consumers. You weren't just buying a soda anymore, you were experiencing a social Zeigarnik effect. Finding your friend's name on a bottle became an incredibly satisfying task resolution. It was an absolutely brilliant manipulation of our fundamental need for closure and social connection.
So as we wrap up this explainer, and you maybe start to notice a little uncomfortable cognitive itch forming in your own mind, I want to leave you with one final thought. Whether it's a TV show fading to black, an unfinished to-do list sitting on your desk, or a cryptic product announcement, your brain is always hunting for closure. So tell me, what open loop is your brain trying to close right now?